Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi everyone, and welcome to another Woke Wednesday. This podcast was created to shed light on different societal issues which have been at the forefront of public discourse through one of the most divisive times in American history. More so, it was created with the intent of allowing those who have often been neglected, shunned, or misunderstood to have a chance to share their experiences and thoughts. I hope that this dialogue encourages critical conversation and activism amongst all listeners, and I hope you'll tell all your friends about it and share it on your social platforms. Now, let's get into these current events. Last weekend, the Billboard Music Awards took place and a multitude of stars attended the event. At the show, performances included Paula Abdul, Madonna, BTS, and Halsey, my girl Ariana, and lastly, Taylor Swift. While the other performances definitely had their fans cheering, the one that left people still tweeting about it today was Taylor Swift's. Coined Mayochella, or Nochella, Swift's opening number included a marching band dressed in all pink, with Swift with a whistle strutting the stage in a hot pink dress and posing before the start of her performance. Ironically, this little piece comes just a few weeks after Beyonce's Homecoming film came out on Netflix that presented the behind the scenes of what it took to get ready for her Coachella performance and the performance itself. If you watch the film, then you know the cultural impact it had to see a superstar Black woman paying respects to HBCUs, homecoming, and Black bodies all together on a stage that had never been headlined by a Black woman in all of its history. Of course, the Beehive took to social media in outrage at the attempt, and when I say attempt, I mean attempt, of a copycat performance from Beachella that literally people have been rewatching and rewatching for the past few weeks. I say attempt again because if you truly watch the performance, then you'd recognize quickly that Swift's mediocre attempt at replicating Beyonce's opening number was incredibly subpar. Her fans quickly came to her defense with the argument that it wasn't the same and that Beyonce didn't invent marching bands. Duh, no shit. That's not what the Beehive or myself are saying, who are calling Swift out for trying to mimic the performance. The point of the matter is that a Black woman who worked tirelessly for months to put on that show in a matter of weeks had her performance undermined by an imitation that in no way, shape, or form matched up to the exceptional show Beyonce put on. That's the reason for the outrage. Obviously, celebrities and humans alike will copy each other when they see something they like or admire. Everyone's done that, and there's no taking away from it. What we're arguing is that its very existence attempts to dilute Beyonce's love letter to her community. Furthermore, it didn't look authentic or genuine at all. She looked uncomfortable, stiff, and totally out of her element. I'm also sure, or at least I hope, that someone had to have said something to her at some point when they were practicing this number, that maybe they should hold off on doing it, seeing as how Beyonce literally just dropped her performance less than a month before the award ceremony.
So, girl, let's talk about it. I just got through watching Billboard Awards 2019. I just got through seeing Taylor Swift open up. Sis was serving us Mayochella. Okay, real quick and recognized. I just saw it. And I want to talk about it because I know a lot of folks are already buzzing and saying what they got to say on Twitter. Some people are saying we are reaching. Some people are saying something about blind outrage. Some folks don't know what they're talking about, and they probably want to go read some books before they try to make themselves a Twitter scholar. But I want to have a conversation about it because I think a lot of us are doing a disservice and a lot of us are not being genuine. And I can't imagine being a person of color, let alone a black person, and getting on Al Gore's internet and defend a rich white woman. In 2019, no ma'am. A lot of people are already making comparisons on Taylor Swift's performance. She started out, somebody blew the whistle, the drummers came out in these pink outfits or whatever. Taylor Swift looked and she gave this the shoulder, like her shoulder was about to fall off or something. She looked so uncomfortable. She just didn't look like she was there. It's just not her. It was just not her. So immediately when I saw it, I was like, girl, this ain't it. This ain't it. And let me just go ahead and put this out here. I am not a Beyonce stan at all. Y'all know that, girl. I do not listen to Daddy Lessons. I hate Ring Off and I hate the other song that she got. I don't, Sandcastle. Ooh, I hate Sandcastle. I'm not a Beyonce stan like that. Go to somebody else's YouTube channel who stands for everything she do. That's not me. I'm gonna call it out regardless. Now, however, I do respect and look up to the creativity that Beyonce has with her team and how she's able to execute stuff to such a perfection. So I can appreciate that. So there is no way with me looking at this that I did not see a comparison behind Beachella. Like, I'm seeing Beyonce's performance at Coachella right in my face. A year later, Beyonce just got through dropping a Netflix documentary, rehashing everything about Beachella, making us feeling everything around Beachella, then gave us a live album with a cute song. So there's been so much conversation, so many articles, so many everything about Beyonce's performance. She said she was the first, black woman to open up Coachella or something. Like the class that it has, the execution that it has, the presence that it has. Everything Beyonce did that. Like, she does not own bands. Like, performers have been doing that forever. Like, artists have been using bands and all that other stuff. One band, one sound. I don't see how people who are working for Taylor Swift don't say, hey, you know what? Beyonce just dropped this. And like, she just did this last year, and she has this Netflix documentary, so much around their performance and bands and how that stuff is used. Why don't we wait till later on to do this? Let's not do that right now. Like, it might not seem genuine. Nobody in the boardroom said, you know what, girl, I don't know. And I know y'all lying. I know somebody did. I know somebody said, hey, you know what? But Taylor Swift is a white woman. At the end of the day, she don't have to. She don't have to step for a second. She don't have to stop for a second and say, you know what? To give respect to her, I'm gonna let this shit play out. Taylor Swift probably ain't like, girl, whatever. Like, her whole team said, girl, we just gonna do it regardless. What they gonna say? And this goes into the conversation of people thinking somebody is talented just because they're selling a lot of singles and they have a lot of money, or they have, sold a lot of albums and stuff. Like, Taylor Swift is mediocre. I will tell you that. Like, she's a Q or whatever, country singer or whatever. But, like, when it comes to performing, she doesn't have it. And she knows she doesn't have it, which is why she's always nervous when she's getting ready to come out. She don't know what to do. And then that has nothing to do with her shade. They don't have nothing to do with her color. She just does not have it. There's a couple of white girls who try to take a little stuff and try to make some stuff happen. But Taylor Swift just does not have it. And they try to implement her and something that she cannot do. She could not perform. She looked a mess. She looked uncomfortable. And for you people who are getting on Al Gore's internet and sitting here saying that, oh, y'all out here thinking Beyonce owned the band and this and that, and she don't do this, and I didn't see it. A lot of people are seeing it. If a lot of people are seeing it, something kind of has to be there. That's why the hashtag Nochella, Mayochella, all of these things started, because people saw it, and some folks probably were scared to speak on it because they were scared that people gonna come at them. And for folks to say there's like, oh, y'all just want to be outrageous, y'all just want to be mad, y'all just want to start a conversation. What do we get out of this outrage stuff? Tell me, what do I get out of being outrageous and blowing stuff up? What do I get out of that? What do we get out talking about some stuff like that? Ain't none of these folks making no money out of talking about this stuff. They have a conversation. We all get on social media to talk about stuff that we all experienced at one point of time.
So there's honestly no excuse for her disregarding Beyonce's cultural movement by choosing to still perform her set. She should have just kept it, because even if it wasn't an attempt at copying her, the shit wasn't cute or entertaining. It was boring and dry and dusty and not cute. Anyways, another current event that didn't get as much media coverage as the huge college admissions scandal that placed Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin at the center of it all was a similar incident that's currently rocking the campuses of UCLA and Cal State right now. Luke Kai was recently arrested on suspicion of facilitating an international cheating ring. Kai is being accused of helping at least 40 Chinese international students obtain student visas by fraudulently taking the TOEFL exam, which is an English proficiency test. To be honest, he might have gotten away with it because the passports he and his co-conspirators used looked very legitimate in nature. But where he messed up was he charged all the test fees to his credit card. While this case truly replicates the bigger cheating scandal that sparked conversations surrounding privilege and affirmative action, one thing this case does have that the other doesn't is now, whether intentionally or unintentionally, international students will have to carry a heavier burden of providing their academic integrity when attempting to study in the U.S. or any other country in general. It's already difficult enough for international students to get these student visas and then find jobs that will sponsor them afterwards, especially in the era of Trump. But it's growing exceedingly impossible to do this when you have scandals like this. Now, let's get into this week's episode. Although I currently live in one of the most diverse cities in the country, Houston, Texas, if you didn't know, a problem I've noticed here and other major cities is the ever-growing issue of gentrification. Gentrification is a process of neighborhood change that includes economic change in historically disinvested neighborhoods by means of real estate investment and new higher-income residents moving in, as well as demographic change, not only in terms of income level, but also in terms of changes in the education level and racial makeup of residents. While it's definitely a complex subject that's increasingly negatively impacting underserved communities across the globe, however, it's something that has to be addressed amongst policymakers and surrounding communities because the problem of it by no means is shrinking. Instead, it's happening the complete opposite way. Gentrification encompasses three main factors. One, the historic conditions of a community that makes them especially susceptible to policies and laws that favor gentrification practices. Two, the way investment and disinvestment is taking place in that specific city and globally as a result of those historic conditions, and the overall impact of gentrification on communities. Let me give y'all a little history lesson because y'all know I love history. From the 1930s to the 1960s, federal bank standards began labeling communities predominantly home to people of color as risky or unfit for investment, which began the practice of redlining, which prevented people of color from having access to homes to buy houses in either better suited areas for them and their children, or even in their neighborhood altogether, or even having the ability to repair their already owned houses. Doing this obviously propelled white suburbs and decreased capital and wealth in the already disadvantaged areas, which, if you haven't heard of the term white flight, you need to look it up because this was happening a lot during this era and honestly still happens today. Fast forward to the mid-2000s, we see that subprime lending was a main factor in a mass increase in foreclosures in poorer areas, which led to investors moving into these areas and flipping them in bulk for large profits. And we still see this today, so prevalent in 2019. These disinvested neighborhoods that people and investors alike seek to move into do so for different reasons. Affordability being a main catalyst for the initial moving in. When higher earning companies and residents began to move into these places, the property values, rent, etc., often increase for the residents that have begin living there from the very start. More so, these companies and people that are often seen as better and characterized as providing much needed changes for these places causes a ripple effect in creating more options for healthier food choices, community centers, schools, etc., that raise the monetary value of these areas that the people who previously lived there probably can't afford now. This goes into the idea of displacement, which means that long-term residents don't have the luxury of benefiting from these amenities that are now home to the physical place they've been residing in for far longer. Displacement can often lead to isolation, longer work commutes for people, disrupt the educational paths for children, and a loss of belonging for people who have claimed these spaces as their own. It's not to say that all of these amenities that gentrification aren't worthy of being placed into these spaces, but at what cost? Because obviously I know things such as healthy food options, workout spaces, higher performing schools, things like that, they're deserving to be in these communities, but it's typically only happening when things like gentrification happen. Anyways, while communities of color and poor communities of color are deserving of access to reliable transportation, healthier food options, like I said, equitable educational choices, and more, it shouldn't be at the cost of pushing those people who are most needing of those things out of their areas because of corporate greed and self-interest, which is honestly, go listen to my episode on large corporations because I'll break it down for you. Corporate greed is literally one of the things that's killing our nation. Anyways, it's also important to highlight that those moving into these neighborhoods are not some sort of savior for the people already residing there, nor should they be the focal point in which other businesses then choose to take their business there for investment. Just saying. If you didn't want to do it when a bunch of Black and brown people were living there, why do you want to do it now when higher earning Black and brown people are living there, or when white people are living there? Check your bias. In the 3rd Ward of Houston, fun fact, Beyonce herself was born here, which has widely been known as one of the poorest and worst places to live in Houston, is currently taking meaningful steps to help fight against gentrification as it's beginning to impact its area. Community development groups are dedicating themselves to providing and managing low-income houses for their residents. Some government agencies are helping amass land in these areas to build affordable housing for people, while others and nonprofits are pushing towards the aim of making home ownership affordable through community land trust business plans, which essentially ensures that community stewardships of lands will occur all while ensuring long-term affordability. Today, there are over 255 community land trust business plans. Another major factor that ushers in waves of gentrified land use is the presence of green space, which basically means parks and nicer outdoor areas, and updated structures from developments, which Ponce City Market or any other Beltline area. And while these projects are nice and definitely contribute to the value of a neighborhood, it could have the ability to force citizens out of their homes who have been living in these spaces literally for their whole lives. These developers increase the value of the land in these areas and make it more expensive for low-income people to live there. Obviously, gentrification is a structural and very nuanced issue. There's so much more to it than many, myself included, fail at understanding what it exactly is and how it's impacting our own personal lives and those around us. Preserving affordable housing, having community political representation, and minimizing cultural displacement are a few ways in which members of their respective communities can minimize the efforts of gentrification happening to their areas. Having autonomy from those already residing in these communities and how these neighborhoods become revitalized should be one of the main factors in determining whether investors are able to move into these places because of the long-term impact they will have on these areas. Providing a living wage is also essential holistically because if people are able to afford their areas in the state they're currently in and the potential state it could be in after higher earning residents move in, that's paramount at combating displacement. Voting. Y'all know I'm always getting on to y'all about voting. Voting is such a clear and easy way to ensure that people are living equitably. Making sure that you're doing your research always helps to make the best decision on the representative to lead and organize specific areas. We also need to develop sustainability. We really do, y'all. With all citizens' needs in mind, and not just those needs which love to go to nice and trendy places. Looking after citizens with real needs, citizens who need to keep a roof over their heads, provide for their families. Period. Everyone. We need to be thinking of every single person in mind when we are voting for certain representatives because those representatives will typically have a bigger impact on the communities that are often unheard and thrown to the side. I hope that this episode was informative and thought-provoking for all that listened and for those that will listen in the future. I hope that the systemic implications our cities and states have had in regards to controlling how functional and affordable the areas we live in motivates you to be conscious in your choices regarding where you will move because gentrifiers come in all races, ethnicities, religions, etc. There is no certain group who is excluded from doing this. I also hope that it promotes you to become actively engaged in whatever community you currently reside in order to become more understanding of the impact different businesses and residents are actually having on those who have been living there for years. It's not just enough to engage with these people. Those in higher positions of status have to use their voice and privilege to get attention of these policymakers and investors that are negatively impacting our spaces. People of color have long been unheard on this issue and others, and that simply has to change so that our communities can thrive and flourish like the dominant ones have been doing for centuries. Remember, all of these opinions are my own, but they should be everyone else's. Have a woke Wednesday. Thank you for another Woke Wednesday. Transcripts of entire episodes will be available on the Woke Wednesday website. Episodes are written and produced by Hannah Mason and Trey Leonard of Lenico Entertainment. Episodes are hosted by Hannah Mason and edited by Trey Leonard. All graphics are designed by Anna French.